Hey guys, welcome back to more neighbor stories. In this video, a ridiculous Karen sued me for having the audacity to grill fish on my property, claiming that barbecues are prohibited in the neighborhood. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, Neighbor called the fire department on my barbecue. Last night I decided to have a barbecue with a few of my friends. I made sure to check the county website to see if we had a fire ban on or something. Everything was fine and we had a small radio playing in the background. The level of noise was low enough that we could talk without having to raise our voices, and there were 4 of us, so it's not a loud occasion at all. Anyway, about 45 minutes in, we hear a loud diesel engine running just out front. I go to see who it is, and 2 men in full gear are walking towards me, and I'm flabbergasted. They tell me one of my neighbors called in and said my house was on fire. I know exactly which neighbors they are, because they have done this before and I can see them through their back window staring at us. So, due to the fact that I don't have a fire grate, I cannot keep the fire going because of the county bylaws. My fireplace is not suitable for use due to the fact that it's got some loose rocks, true in its rough shape. So we shut it down and I tell my mom. She informs me that we have not 1 but 2 more fireplaces, both equipped with grates. So then we start 2 new fires. Within an hour the department is back and they are ready to find me, but they see that everything is all good and up to code, so they leave. We proceeded to turn up the radio and make the fires big and keep going until 1 AM. Update: the next day I woke up still fuming about the incident. My friends had left a while ago, the fire had died down to embers and the only sound was the chirping of crickets, but the anger lingered. It wasn't just about the fire department visit, it was about my neighbor's constant needling, their apparent determination to make my life difficult. I knew I could not let them get away with it though. I spent the morning researching the county bylaws, combing through every word related to open fires, noise ordinances and anything else that might be relevant. I printed out the entire section on open burning, highlighting the parts about approved fireplaces and the lack of daytime noise restrictions. I wanted to be armed with facts, ready to counter any accusations, so around midday I marched over to my neighbor's house, the printed bylaws clutched in my hand. I knocked on their door, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and apprehension. The wife answered, her face etched with surprise at seeing me on her doorstep. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm despite the nerves. I stepped inside before she could object, placing the printed bylaws on their kitchen table. "This," I said, tapping the papers, "is everything you need to know about open burning in this county. My fireplaces are perfectly legal and there are no noise restrictions during the day. You called the fire department on a perfectly safe, contained fire. You wasted their time and mine." The husband entered the kitchen, his face hardening as he saw me. "What's this about?" he demanded. I met his gaze directly. "It's about you two making false reports and harassing me. I'm done with it. Next time you have a problem, come talk to me directly instead of calling the authorities. Otherwise," I added, my voice taking on a steely edge, "I'll be the one making calls and it won't be to the fire department." They sputtered, trying to defend their actions, but I cut them off. "I'm not interested in excuses here, just understand this. I know my rights and I'm not afraid to stand up for myself." I left without another word, feeling a sense of triumph mixed with lingering anger. The encounter was not necessarily pleasant, but it was necessary. I had drawn a line in the sand. The following weeks were tense. I could feel their eyes on me whenever I was outside, but they kept their distance. I continued to have fires, enjoying the warmth and the crackle of burning wood, always mindful of safety and the relevant regulations. Gradually, the tension eased. We never became friends, but a grudging respect settled between us. They never called the authorities on me again, and I never had to confront them again. And yeah, Ripe Stars, props to OP for handling the situation like a champion. That's exactly how you should approach such neighbor issues. Either way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much, and the next one is titled, Neighbor Sued Me for Grilling Fish, and it is the title story. So when I was young, my parents taught me to be a good neighbor. They taught all of their children the value of a kind neighborly greeting and how neighbors can become like an extension of your own family. When I finally bought a house and settled down, I believed my neighbors would become like family. Unfortunately, my dream house came with a neighbor so crazy that they would take the cake, or shall I say, fish. It was a bumpy road to finding the perfect house, but when we did, we just knew it was right. It was an adorable cottage with enough space inside for me and my wife and plenty of room outside for our daughter to play. What really sold us though was the neighborhood. Our home was on the same street as a small park and there was an active neighborhood watch and lots of kind people living there. They even had a welcome wagon to help new transplants to the street get adjusted. It was a great little community with one exception. A few weeks after we had settled into the house, I heard a knock at the front door. I went to answer it and it was a familiar looking woman. I scrunched my eyebrow as I worked to place her face and then it came to me, she lived next door. "You must be our next door neighbor," I said warmly. "Yes, hello, I'm Carrie," she said. "Nice to meet you, we are glad to be here, it's such a nice neighborhood," I said. "Right. Well, I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself," she said. "Well then, great to meet you, neighbor," I said. "Right, one more thing. I work from home, so noise can be bothersome. I noticed you have a dog. If you can just try to keep it from barking too much, that would be great," she said. I was stunned. Our dog was a 10-year-old lab. He was the most lazy and docile dog I'd ever known, and he very rarely barked. "Okay," I said, "he's pretty old. I don't think he'll bother you," I said. "Right, great. I guess nice meeting you then," she said. I waved and shut the door. Once it was closed, I looked at my quiet old dog and roughed up his fur. I said, "She's a piece of work, right boy?" However, Carrie from next door seemed to be the only person on the street we didn't immediately get along with. On the other side of us lived a wonderful couple who loved to cook and have dinner parties. Across the street was a single dad who put together an old dad's basketball league and invited me to join. On the other side of Carrie was a great family with 3 sons. The father of the family was in the basketball league and became my best friend. Overall, the neighborhood was amazing, but the longer we lived there, the more run-ins we had with Carrie. She showed up at our door at least once a week with a new complaint. The more times she dropped by, the more outrageous and intrusive the complaints became. First it was me and the boys shooting hoops at night. I understood and we kept it down. The next week it was that my daughter used chalk on her sidewalk. I apologized, but that time around I really didn't get it. Another time she dropped by just to complain about the glare coming off our windows on sunny days and I was baffled as to what she expected me to do. All my other friends on the street had similar run-ins with her. She was a busybody with an axe to grind and she had zeroed in on us neighbors. She even started dropping by the park and complaining about the noise of our dribbling while we practiced basketball in a public park. I never imagined that she could get worse than that, but she proved me wrong. That weekend we had our next door neighbors over. Since they loved cooking, we decided to grill. They brought amazing salmon and we picked kale from our garden for the salad. The menu was perfect and the fish on the grill smelled incredible. The meal ended up being such a hit that I wouldn't let our friends leave without giving me their fish marinade recipe. The next night I surprised the family by picking up fresh salmon again and whipping up that delicious marinade. I fired up the grill and got cooking. Just as I was flipping the fish over, I heard someone calling my name. I looked around and saw Carrie hanging over the fence that divided our lawns. "Excuse me," she yelled. "What's up, Carrie?" I called back. "You need to turn that grill off," she said. "Huh?" "I said turn it off," she repeated like a demanding child. "I'm sorry about a little smoke, but I'm almost done," I said, trying to be patient. "No, I'm a vegan and I cannot live like this. Your disgusting fish makes the entire street rank. It gets in through my windows and makes all my fabrics stink like fish," she huffed. I tried not to laugh. I have nothing against anyone with a special diet. It is when they start trying to play the martyr in my backyard that I have a problem. "I'm truly sorry, but this is my yard, my grill, and my family's dinner. I'm gonna cook it as I see fit," I said. "That's how you're gonna be?" she said indignantly. "Right, I'm calling the cops." "On my fish?" I laughed. "No, on you. Grilling is actually not allowed. I will report this," she said. "Good luck," I said. As angry as I was, I didn't want to incite her. I took my fish off the grill and stormed inside. There, I used a few choice curse words for how I felt about her and then I served dinner. I wouldn't stoop to her level or let her ruin my family's evening. The next day my daughter was playing outside. She ran over to me and asked where the chalk had gone. I wasn't sure, so I looked all over. The last time I saw it was when she was drawing the other day, so I walked up and down the sidewalk. "Looking for this?" Carrie called from her porch. She was holding my daughter's chalk. "Yeah, thanks," I said. "Uh-huh," she said. "I'm throwing this away. Your kid used it on my side of the sidewalk again. She doesn't deserve chalk." I was fuming. I wanted to tell her exactly what I thought she deserved, but I was raised to be polite and not incite drama. I walked away with my fists clenched, bought my daughter new chalk and reminded her that our front sidewalk was actually city property, so you can color the whole damn sidewalk, sweetie. Any way you want, I said, and I laughed to myself about my little revenge. A few hours later, a police car rolled into Carrie's driveway. I watched the officer get out, I waved at them, and within half an hour they were knocking on my door. "Sir, we are here about a disturbance of air quality," the first officer said. "You mean the smell?" I asked. The second cop smiled despite himself. "Yes, your neighbor has reported some disturbances." He pulled out a notepad and flipped through. "She mentioned a fishy smell and some unwanted art." I grinned. Yeah, our neighbors make great salmon. They just taught us and we were trying it out. As soon as she made it clear it was a disturbance, I cleaned up, I said. The first officer nodded. "And the chalk?" "You can see for yourself. My 9-year-old is a great artist. She only draws on the public sidewalk and our driveway," I said. The officers both looked back towards the sidewalk at her chalk drawings and then smiled themselves. "Did Carrie mention that she stole my daughter's chalk?" I said. The officers shook their heads. "I don't like being disruptive, honestly. I want everyone to get along and I'm trying to be nice. She expects a lot of her neighbors," I said. "Yeah, I can see that," the officer said. I smiled and shook their hands. The police left and I figured that would be the end of this nightmare saga with the neighbor, but it wasn't. 2 days later, I received a notarized cease and desist letter from Carrie's lawyer. It stated that because I didn't end my disruptive behavior, she would be suing me. I was so upset that I wanted to tear the letter up, but it didn't end there. I got subpoenaed to appear in court over the matter. She was suing me for property damages she claimed her possessions suffered due to excessive fish smell as well as emotional damages. I couldn't believe the lengths she was willing to go to make me pay for grilling fish. The craziest thing was that I'd actually been nice the entire time. I cleaned up the grill and even asked my daughter to only draw in our driveway. If you ask me, I was the one suffering emotional damage here. What else could she want from me and my family? Luckily, my friend across the street who organized the basketball team was also a great lawyer. I reached out to him right away. "This is junk," he said. "Really?" I asked. "To be blunt, yeah. She's making excessive demands. I live right across the street and I never smelled the fish. So for her to say the aroma was so strong it ruined her possessions is overkill," he said. "So you can get it tossed out?" I asked. "Oh yeah," he said. And he did. It only took about a week for him to get the entire lawsuit thrown out. I never had to pay fines or anything, however, Carrie ran into some trouble as a side effect of the lawsuit. The rumor was that she was already pretty hard up for money, but she spent so much hiring a lawyer that it bankrupted her. She ended up listing her house to try to recoup her losses, and within 6 months she was gone from our street. I felt bad for her, but I cannot say I was sad to see her go. As an added bonus, the woman who bought the house is a renowned chef. Since she moved in, everyone's grills are back and cooking. The neighborhood has never smelled better. The next one is another revenge story. So much like a lot of people during college, I had a part-time job at a major coffee chain. It was great because it provided me with extra cash and an unlimited supply of caffeine. Like most chains, the driving factor to draw people in is excellent customer service and that no matter how ridiculous the customer is, he or she is always right. On this specific day right before our major rush, the only customers we had was a husband, wife with their 4 kids ages 2 to 5. The wife tells the husband her order while they go through the line and walks out. The 4 girls eventually follow her out after looking through pastry cases while husband makes the order. No big deal at this point, pretty normal interaction, but I notice one of the girls has taken a bottle of water from the pastry case, so I mention it to the husband. Husband was really cool about it, and even though I told him it was no big deal, he still paid the $1.95 for the bottle. 15 to 20 minutes go by and our rush has started. We have 15 plus people now in line and the husband marches back in straight up to me, clearly upset as he walks past the line. Husband says to me, "Hey, why did you tell me my daughter stole a bottle of water?" Me, "My apologies, sir. It must have only looked like your daughter took a bottle of water. Not to worry, let me get you back the $1.95. Husband, "What's with the attitude? Are you calling me a liar?" Guy is making a pretty big scene and everyone is looking. Me, "Not at all, sir. I just meant I must have been incorrect with watching your daughter walk out the door holding a bottle of water." I am at this point holding the money out to the husband and he is refusing to take it. Husband, "It's not about the $1.95, it's about the principle. If you're calling me a liar, we can take this outside." Me, "No, sir." Please sir, you are holding up our line now and need to take your refund and leave. Husband starts saying and talking a bunch of crap but is slowly going. Finally, after taking the money, he says one last condescending remark to many that finally rubs me the wrong way. Me, thank you sir, have a nice day, enjoy your bottle of water. This then leads to the husband throwing his $1.95 back at me, completely missing me and hitting one of my coworkers instead. Husband starts demanding to speak to my manager immediately. Luckily at that moment the manager was out, so we defused the situation and told the husband to come back in an hour to speak to the manager. Now after all this build up, here comes my petty revenge. After the husband left, my manager got back about 30 minutes later. I explained everything that happened while he was gone. My manager looked perplexed about the story because when he walked in the store after he got back there was an unopened bottle of water shoved between a bunch of coffee mugs on a stand right in front of the entrance. My manager decided to pull the store security tapes and lo and behold, the dude put it on the shelf seconds before confronting me at the register. The guy then comes back just a bit later with a buddy absolutely steaming. I happened to meet him at the front door when he walked in and he demanded to see my manager and telling me that he's about to get me fired. And well, my manager comes out to talk to the guy and I slowly stalked off just in earshot pretending to clean tables to get a front row seat of the show. Husband takes no time at all and yells, "I demand an apology, my money back and that guy fired," and points at me. My manager calmly turns around, grabs the bottle of water that is still sitting on the shelf behind him, hands it to the guy and says, "No, I don't think so. After looking at the security footage, we watched you bring the bottle back and place it back on the shelf." The sheer look of horror on the husband's face was priceless. I'd never seen a person so stunned in my life. It was great. The guy started backtracking and sputtering out nonsensical apologies. The crowning moment was still to come. My manager then pulls out the $1.95 that was thrown back at me earlier in an envelope with $1.95 wrote on the outside, hands it to the guys and says, "Clearly you need this more than we do. Now after you apologize to my barista, you can get out of my store." The husband was so embarrassed he refused to take the money back. I have now drifted close enough by that the guy reaches his hand out to me, shakes my hand, apologizes and then walks out the store utterly annihilated. This was one of my most satisfying days working there because I finally got a petty revenge on one of those piece of crap entitled customers. And the next one is titled Malicious Compliance Perfectly. So I met a random guy through a friend at a bar in the city. Let's call the guy I met Mark for the purpose of this post. My friend had introduced me to Mark because for a few years leading up to that introduction, I shared an idea I had for a business with anyone who would listen. I was told Mark wanted to start his own business, had worked in the industry and knew a lot about the subject matter required and thought my idea was good. Mark and I met up for lunch and we hit it off. He said he would start the business as the CEO and agreed to me taking a part-time operational role. I agreed to help solely in a part-time operational role because I couldn't afford to quit my day job. I put in 15% of the cash for 5% ownership since Mark was gonna put in founder hours, 80+ hours a week, and agreed to put up 85% of the cash, which was more money than I could afford to risk on a new venture. Well, I worked part-time, I did what I said I would do, I even tried to be of assistance on things I had no experience with. I connected Mark with a fella I had done business with before, we will call him Paul. Paul and I got into a dispute ourselves, more on this later. Anyway, let's fast forward a few months and I got into a dispute with Mark over stationery. Yes, stationery not being to his liking caused him to flip out. This was despite him picking the stationery out. Next up, the contract I got from Mark was not what we agreed. The legal work required a few months to get done and I had expected delays, but when I finally got it, the paperwork did not represent what I had agreed to own. Not only that, but my investment was not being acknowledged under the terms we had committed to when I put the money in. Now, as I said, I was not able to risk much and I only invested what I could afford to lose, so this was not a huge sum of money. I did not want to make a big deal about it since the amount was small and he began promising a new contract when the business could pay for the lawyers to make changes. I signed nothing and then it worsened. Mark and I start to fight anytime we are in a room together. As I think back, it's almost comical how angry he would get in my presence. I have other things to do with my time than squabble over stuff like stationery, so I worked on my areas of the business and I hoped things would grow. I stopped in whenever I could and would help out regularly as needed with as little Mark interaction as possible. Paul would intervene sometimes when Mark would get particularly difficult to be around. Anyway, fast forward about 2 years and Mark cannot help but tell everyone who will listen that the business is going well. I have no idea how well things are going because Mark is not giving me any updates. And well, I get a call around Christmas from Mark, he wishes me a happy holiday and then drops the bomb on me that he wants to terminate my involvement and refund my investment. I decline the investment refund and say I'm happy to no longer work with him. In my head, I think it's kind of hilarious that he thinks this will just end that easily, but I say nothing to that accord to him. Mark and I hang up with him aggravated about my refusal to take the refund on my investment. Mark then sends me an email that I had resigned. This had no basis in fact, but certainly was creative about what we had just discussed. I correct him immediately in a reply stating that he wanted to no longer work together and that I can see that being the case but want to discuss my investment. A few days later, Mark demands that I come pick up a check for a reimbursement of my investment. I do not come and get it. Next thing you know, the company attorney huffs and puffs and tries to scare me with some strongly worded letter. This is the same idiot attorney who screwed up my contract to work on the business and my investment agreement. Let's call this attorney Mr. Cohn for the sake of this story. I sent an email response to Mr. Cohn that he screwed up, the company seems to be doing well, that I hear rumors about how well and that I want to be on this for the foreseeable future and I'll not take one-to-one cash out for what I put in. The attorney then emails me back stating in writing that Mark never accepted my electronic transfer into the company account. Instead, Mark has another company he accepted the money into, a company I've never heard of. A company that is different than the name of the recipient on my electronic transfer, a company that would be committing wire fraud to accept the money I sent. On that note, I did some sleuthing online. I found out Mark had been forming one company every month or two. Then there were media reports and documents he let slip in shared drives he forgot I had access to from when we agreed to work together. Mark was too cheap and stupid to pay for tech help, so he was using my shared folders I had created, and I certainly was not obligated to turn off the shares if he wanted to work out of them. Those documents showed me Mark had recently raised the money in the company I sent the payment to at 200 times the valuation I had bought into it, and Mark did not disclose the investment to the new investors. Mark had, however, put me on documents showing my ownership to previous investors. Not on documents I'd ever seen before, but documents he had been sending around. So when I share my suspicions that Mark is committing wire fraud with Mr. Cohn, I'm told I'm the one breaking the law by knowing anything about the investment documents the company has used. Mr. Cohn tells me that by not picking up my check, I will not be entitled to any money and to contact law enforcement if I think something illegal has happened. He cautions through that I'll be the one in trouble. Cue my malicious compliance. I let the different respective members of the Securities and Exchange Commission along with law enforcement know what happened to me. I provided them all of the documents I had from the matter. It took about 5 years for the investigation to conclude, for charges to be brought, and for a trial to conclude, and for Mark to go to jail. They say government is slow, but they are not kidding with just how slow. Maybe it was slow because Mark was running a large, tens of millions of dollars large fraud. Anyway, Mark will be serving time for about 30 felony charges they found uncovering the details of his Ponzi scheme. He will be away for a long time. I never did anything wrong. With the information I was able to provide, Mr. Cohn ended up getting disbarred. There were other things Mr. Cohn did outside of what is shared in this post that I cannot share, or it could help to identify me to the folks involved. The investigators credited me with bringing the fraud to their attention. I lost my money in this ordeal but gained an education, and I got to help bring down a crook. The sheer stupidity of Mark is that he didn't even follow the business plan I had, he just used it as a story to convince investors to give him money. It's a business model that works very well. It took a few more years, but I am now in a position to be pursuing this business full time with people of high integrity who all work together to ensure each other's success. We expect to have an extremely profitable year in 2023 after proving the business model worked in 2020. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I'm so happy about the turnout of the story for OP. This ending felt really good. It's good to see the good guys win and the bad guys lose, not gonna lie. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you again tomorrow.